Hello and welcome to our first video for Math 8. If you are in periods 1, 2, or 6 for Mrs. Andrews, this is the video for you. If you are in algebra, this is not the video for you. Okay, our lesson today is I want you to be able to evaluate positive, zero, and negative exponents on whole numbers and fractions. So a positive exponent looks like this. All right, we'll talk about that first. The large number of 5 is our base. And the smaller number up here is the exponent. Okay, basically what this means is that you're taking the 5 to the third power, means writing the number 5 3 times with multiplication signs in between. So 5 times 5 times 5. And a lot of people want to say, oh, that's 15. Well, it's not 5 times 3, it's 5 times 5 times 5. So the first 5 times the second 5, that makes 25 right there. So we're already more than the 15. And 25 times 5 is 125. Okay, exponents blow up into big numbers very fast, and you're not going to be doing them in your head for the most part. Okay, exponential form is what you see right above that. Okay, exponential form is this right here, where you have a base and you have an exponent. Expanded form is where I wrote it out, right here. This is expanded form right here. The exponent tells you how many times to multiply the base by itself. Okay, so we got some sample problems here. The first sample problem says 3 squared. So first we're going to write the expanded form, which is 3 2 times with a time sign in between. 3 times 3, this is one you can do in your head. It's 9. Okay, but 4 to the 5th power, definitely not one I can do in my head. We're going to do 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. Now on a calculator, you could just type in the 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. I've already lost track myself how many times I typed it in. The easier thing to do, and I'm going to use the highlighter tool, the easier thing to do is type in the 4, and then there's a key over here. That's the caret key. Now if you're not using our calculator that we use in school, you have a cell phone calculator or a different calculator, look for this thing that looks like an up arrow without the stem. That's your caret key. And that tells the calculator that whatever number you put in next is going to be an exponent. So after I type the caret key, I would type the 5, and that is how I would do 4 to the 5th power, and then equals, and it will give me my answer. $1,024. And to be honest, I don't know that answer in my head without using a calculator, so you do not know that answer in yours either. Okay, let's come over here to this side, and I'll erase these. Okay, we got some fractions. And fractions really don't work any differently. Okay, there's a couple different ways you could think about this. You could think about this as 1/4 written 3 times and multiply it. And if you remember from elementary school, you multiply 1 times 1 times 1. and you get 1. And 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 4 is 64. So 1 over 64. Okay, so that's one possibility of how you could write it out. Another possibility, and you'll get the same answer either way, is one long fraction bar, 1 times 1 times 1 over 4 times 4 times 4. Either way is correct and totally fine. Okay. 4/9 squared. Here again, we can write it as 2 fractions, 4/9 times 4/9, and when you're multiplying, it's 4 times 4 on top is 16, and 9 times 9 is 81 on the bottom. Or you can write it out as one big fraction like I did up here. Okay, what if we have negative bases? Okay, negative bases should be in parentheses, because if the parentheses are not there, you could end up with a different answer. Okay, an exponent of 3 only affects what it directly touches. If the first symbol it touches is a parenthesis, then it affects everything in the parenthesis. So this in expanded form would mean -5 times -5 times -5. Okay? This in expanded form would be -2 times -2 times -2 times -2. 4 -2's. Okay. Let's talk about just these two problems to start with. When we're doing, I want you to understand, yes, you can type this in the calculator, but I want you to understand why one of these answers is going to be positive and one of these answers is going to be negative. Okay? This negative times this negative makes a positive. But then I have this negative here, which doesn't have another negative to make positive with. So my overall answer to this is going to be negative because I have an odd number of negative signs. And I know it's an odd number of negative signs ahead of time because I have an odd number exponent. So an odd number exponent is going to be a negative answer. So -5 to the third power. We did 5 to the third power in the previous page. It's -125. When you type this into the calculator, it's really important that you use the parenthesis keys. When you are doing a negative base on a calculator, it is really important to use parenthesis keys. In other words, I'm going to type it exactly how I see it. I'm going to type the parentheses into the calculator, just the way that I see it. Okay? This one, okay, is an even number of exponent. That means I'm going to have an even number of negative signs. These two negatives will cancel each other out and make a positive. These two negative signs will cancel each other out and make a positive. So if all the negative signs cancel each other out, it makes my answer positive. And my answer, let's see, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 2 is 16. Again, you can type that into the calculator as parenthesis, negative, remember negative key is different from the subtract key, -2, close parenthesis, caret 4. And your calculator will give you the correct answer. Okay, what happens if you don't use parentheses? Okay. If you don't use parentheses, -6 to the third power. The 3 does not touch a parenthesis here. It touches the 6. So what this is really saying is order of operations, we have to do exponents first. The only thing that is considered a base is the 6. The negative sign is separate. So I would find 6 to the third power first. 6 times 6 is 36. 36 times 6. I know this, but I forget. 216. 216. And then bring the negative sign down. But you don't type it into the calculator with parentheses. Okay? And it won't matter now if this exponent here is even or odd, because the negative sign is separate from the exponent. No matter what the exponent is, the answer with no parentheses is always negative. So if you see parentheses, they're important. And you have to type them in. Okay, so let's look at negative 2/3 to the fourth power. So that means negative 2/3 times negative 2/3 times negative 2/3. So let's think about our signs here. We've got, oh, one more. Nope. Missed one. Times negative 2/3. We've got an even number of negative signs. So this one will cancel out that one and make a positive. This one will cancel out this one and make a positive. So my answer is all positive. And you don't have to circle these on your homework assignment and make positives. I'm just doing it to show you. Okay, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 27 times 3 is 81. Or you could break it down as 9 and 9, and 9 times 9 is 81. You could type it in the calculator. Whatever you got to do to get our answer of 16 over 81. Okay? An even exponent has a positive answer. An odd exponent has a negative answer. Now, one word of advice while you're watching my videos is feel free to pause, rewind, and repeat things. That's the point of the video. In class with Mrs. Andrews, you cannot ask all the time. I cannot always pause and rewind and say something again. This is your opportunity to hear something again. Or maybe you're too shy to ask me to repeat something or ask for me to slow down. So this video is a great thing for you, tool for you to use to see things again if you need to. Okay, so exponents is not necessarily a new thing for you, but negative exponents is probably brand new. You've probably never seen a negative exponent before. If you have a negative exponent, what you're doing is you're making a fraction with 1 as the numerator and make the exponent then positive. A negative exponent does not make things negative. If a positive exponent means multiply by something a bunch of times, a negative exponent means to divide by something a bunch of times. Okay? So, for example, 4 to the negative third power. This is the new part. You're really going to want to pay attention here. 4 to the negative third power, what that means is make a fraction. 1 over 4 to the third power. Notice that my 3 is now positive and not negative anymore. Where does the 1 come from? Well, the 1, we have to have something on top, so we just start with 1. And in fact, if we took all of this right here and we multiplied this times 1, it wouldn't change the outcome. So as soon as we're flipping this power underneath the fraction bar, the 1 is just kind of an imaginary invisible 1 that we make visible. Okay, so 1 over 4 to the third power means 1 over 4 times 4 times 4, which is 1 over 64. Again, this is a positive answer. Negative exponents do not make negatives. They keep it's the base that can make things negative. 5 to the negative 2 power becomes 1 over 5 to the positive 2 power. As soon as we've turned it into a fraction, it is now a positive exponent. And we get 1 over 5 times 5, which is 1 over 25. Now, caution. Do not type this into your calculator, because if you do, it will give you the decimal equivalent, okay, of these answers. In other words, if you type 5 to the negative 2 into your calculator, it would give you 0.04. And I'm going to know immediately that you really don't understand what a negative exponent is, that you're just typing into a calculator. And that is not going to get you any credit on the homework or tests or quizzes for this unit. I want you to understand what a negative exponent actually does to the base. There's plenty of other higher level math courses where that knowledge is really critical. You'll be doing this with variables. And when you're doing this with variables, you can't just type x to the negative 7th power into your calculator. Your calculator will have no idea what to do with that. So you really need to understand negative exponents. Okay, so 3 to the negative 4th power would be 1 over 3 to the positive 4th power. And then remember, this is not 1 over 12, okay? These are times signs, not plus signs. 3 times 3 is 9. This other 3 times the third 3 and the fourth 3 make a 9. This is 81. That part you can do on the calculator. I just do not want you typing this into your calculator, because you'll get a decimal, and I'll know that you're really not practicing negative exponents. All right, now we have a negative base and a negative exponent, but let's remember what they do. A negative exponent makes a fraction with a 1 on top. Negative 6 stays in parentheses, but the negative 5 goes to a positive 5. So written out, what this looks like is 1 over negative 6 times negative 6 times negative 6 times negative 6 times negative 6. 1 over. Okay, odd exponent, odd number of negative signs. So I know this is a negative number. But 6 to the 5th power is not something I can do in my head. So I'm going to get a calculator. 6 caret key 5 equals 7,776. Okay, one more time, let's practice that. Okay, we have a negative exponent, so I know we're making a fraction with 1 on top. The 4 just goes to a positive 4, and the base of negative 2 stays the same. Written out, this looks like a 1 on top still, and negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Notice I am not using X signs for times. If you were allowed to use X signs for times in 7th grade, no more. X's are variables. We cannot use them as time signs. That's more of an elementary school symbol. We do use it for scientific notation later in this unit, but that's really the only time I want to see an X for times. We're using a dot but you can also show multiplication with parentheses. Okay, so this is going to be 1 on top. Now, even exponent 4, so I'm going to have 2 negative signs that cancel and 2 negative signs that cancel. So my bottom number, my denominator, will be positive. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 2 is 16. So this ends up being a positive answer because the exponent is even. If you just heard that, I apologize. There's an email coming in. Zero exponent. This blew my mind when I was a kid. I couldn't understand how this is even possible. And I can offer you an explanation later in the chapter of why this is true. But for today, I just want you to understand that anything to the 0 power equals 1. Kids want to say, no, it's 0. Well, it's not 0, it's 1. So if I have 3 to the 0 power, it's equal to 1. Negative 12 to the 0 power is negative 1. Why is it negative? Because 12 to the 0 power is 1, and then we bring the negative 1 down. 1,264,983 to the 0 power. Doesn't matter how big that number is. Anything to the 0 power is 1. A negative number in parentheses, remember now the 0 affects the negative sign and the 8, is positive 1. So the only way I get a negative 1 is if there's no parentheses in this example right here. And 1/5 to the 0 power, even a fraction to the 0 power, is still 1. So if you see a 0 exponent attached to a base, the answer is automatically 1. And like I said, later on in this unit, I will explain why that happens. All right, that is the end of our video for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.